Hello, everyone. It is January 18th, and this is today's afternoon devotional and Bible study live stream. We're going to be reading Jesus is Calling today and the book of Samuel, chapter 3. 1 Samuel, chapter 3. But to get started, we're going to read today's Jesus is Calling devotional. I am leading you along the high road, but there are descents as well as ascents. In the distance, you see snow covered peaks glistening in brilliant sunlight. Your longing to reach those peaks is good, but you must not take shortcuts. Your assignment is to follow me, allowing me to direct your path. Let the heights beckon you onward, but stay close to me. Learn to trust me when things go wrong. Uh, Disruptions to your routine highlight your dependence on me. Trusting acceptance of trials brings blessings that far outweigh them all. Walk hand in hand with me through this day. I have lovingly planned every inch of the way. Trust does not falter when the path becomes rocky and steep. Breathe deep draughts of my presence. Breathe deep my presence and hold tightly to my hand. Together, we can make it. Hi, Rachel. That was the devotional for today, and that was inspired by three different sections of the Bible. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. Then he said to him, "Follow me." John 21:19. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Second Corinthians 4:17. And then lastly, the sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He enables me to go on the heights. Habakkuk 3:19. Uh, so that one, it's like, yeah, it's good to want good things in life, to seek out some of these things. Maybe not necessarily just monetary things, but it's like, hey, if I do this, like I can spread joy, I can have blah 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 blah. Those high points, those good points in life aren't necessarily bad, but don't be completely discouraged when there's a valley. And when you learn to walk with God in the low and in the high, that's when it's good. When you're living life to the full, you get the most out of life. That's when it happens. And we talked a little bit about that the other day too when we were reading through Philippians. Like, I've had far more than I've ever needed. I've been like a rich ruler, and then I've also been like super poor and not having anything to eat and almost starving to death. But I learned how to live through them all and to live well in every situation. That's a really bad paraphrase of that section of Philippians that we just read last week. But, yeah. All right. We're going to jump now to the book of 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel chapter 3. So far, I forgot to turn off my ringer. So far, we've gone through like Hannah and her sister bugging her, and then her praying for a child, and then her dedicating the child to God, and then kind of leaving him in the church to study under Eli, and Eli's children being super wicked, and God going, but I have another plan. And yeah. So now we're going to jump into the book of Samuel. That's a very crude retelling of the first two books of Samuel. But let's continue. And this whole first section, from verse 1 to verse 10, relates back to John 10:27 in the New Testament. So, kind of keep that in mind, and we'll go over that at the end. But without further ado, 1 Samuel, chapter 3. Meanwhile, the boy Samuel served the Lord by assisting Eli. Now, in those days, messages from the Lord were very rare, and visions were quite uncommon. One night, Eli, who was almost blind by now, had gone to bed. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was sleeping in the tabernacle near the Ark of the Covenant. Suddenly, the Lord called out, "Samuel!" "Yes," Samuel replied. "What is it?" He got up and ran to Eli. "Here I am. Did you call me?" I didn't call you," Eli replied. "Go back to bed." So he did. Then the Lord called out again, "Samuel!" Again, Samuel got up and went to Eli. "Here I am. Did you call me?" "I didn't call you, my son. Go back to bed," Eli said. "I did not call you, my son," Eli said. "Go back to bed." Samuel did not yet know the Lord, because he had never had a message from the Lord before. So the Lord called a third time, and once more Samuel got up and went to Eli. "Here I am. Did you call me?" Then Eli realized it was God. It was the Lord who was calling the boy. So he said to Samuel, "Go lie down again. If someone calls you again, say, 'Speak, Lord, your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went back to bed. And the Lord came and called as before, "Samuel! Samuel!" And Samuel replied, "Speak, your servant is listening." Then the Lord said to Samuel, "I am about to do a shocking thing in Israel. I'm going to carry out all my threats against Eli and his family from beginning to end. I have warned him that a judgment is coming upon his family forever, because his sons are blaspheming God, and he hasn't disciplined them. So I have vowed that the sins of Eli and his sons will never be forgiven by sacrifice or offerings." Samuel speaks for the Lord. Samuel stayed in bed until morning. Then he got up and opened his doors of the tabernacle. As usual, he was afraid to tell Eli what the Lord had said to him. But Eli called out to him, "Samuel, my son." "Here I am," Samuel replied. "What did the Lord say to you?" "Tell me everything, and may God strike you and even kill you if you hide anything from me." So Samuel told Eli everything. He didn't hold anything back. "It is the Lord's will," Eli replied. "Let him do what he thinks is best." As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and everything Samuel said proved to be reliable. And all of Israel, from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south, knew that Samuel was confirmed as a prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh and gave messages to Samuel there at the tabernacle. And Samuel's words went out to all the people of Israel. May God add a blessing to the reading of his word. All right. So that's 1 Samuel chapter 3. So 1 Samuel chapter 3, 1 to 10. Here Samuel first learns to listen and discern the voice of the Lord. Later, Jesus urges his followers to listen and discern the voice of the shepherd of the sheep himself. John 10:27. Um, yeah. It's an interesting part of the Bible, I think, for sure. The whole, like Samuel's audibly hearing God call him, and he doesn't recognize God's voice yet. He's been studying and studying, but he doesn't know God's voice yet. And there's a couple of really, really big things in there. So, the first is one, like sometimes God can actually speak to us audibly. That's kind of a crazy thing. Haven't really had it happen to me like that, but I've definitely had God speak to me, but not necessarily audibly. Then one of the other things is, he learns how to do it. So he practices. He's like, all right. So instead of directing my prayers and my answers towards people, I'm going to direct it spiritually. And that's just a huge lesson in and of itself. But, that whole, like, here I am, it's so easy sometimes to misunderstand God's voice, or when God's putting something on us, then we project it to someone else. And just imagine if Eli was like, since you're here, can you put out the light, right? Like, there's a reason that Eli could have been calling Samuel, because the light was still on, right? The fire was still burning. I'm not 100% sure what the God light is. But so there was a possible reason if Eli's like, can you do this? And it would have completely missed the whole point of God calling him. And the big thing is Eli and Samuel were studying the Bible. They were studying and studying and studying, and Samuel still didn't know God's voice. They were studying. He was studying God. He was dedicated to God, and he still didn't know God's voice. How many of us study, want to get to know God, and then we do everything that we can. We just stick our head in the Bible and we study God, but we never really meet God. We never choose to live out our faith. And I don't know. I think I've seen that way too much. One of the other really big things was when God talked to Samuel, he didn't want to tell Eli the message because it was bad. Sometimes, or it was hard. Sometimes God might ask us to do things that are hard, not necessarily like evil or anything like that, but sometimes telling the truth or saying like, hey, this is what's going to be. Like, sometimes God will ask us to do some uncomfortable things. Sometimes life is uncomfortable. Sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. Sometimes consequences are uncomfortable. Talk to any parent that loves their kid and has to discipline them, tell them like, no, you don't do that, or whatever. Like, there are consequences for actions. There is uncomfortable things in truth. Going outside of our comfort zone sometimes is what God calls us to do. And though Eli knew from the body language, I'm assuming, that Samuel didn't want to pass things forward. He didn't want to do what God had warned him, or had told him to pass forward to Eli. It was uncomfortable. It was hard. Here's this man that's been dedicated his life to God, that was training and uplifting him, and he didn't want to tell them the bad news. It's like, I know you've had these warnings and God's going to execute it. And your sons who have been just awful are going to kind of get what's coming to them. And it's not a good thing. It's not a good conversation to have. But it was a necessary conversation. So there's Eli who has the bad news. And as someone that's in a position of leadership and all of that jazz, I've had to have those hard conversations with, people that attend the door, with volunteers, even with like supporters. It's tough. It's hard. But you know what makes it a million times easier? And I've only really think I've had this. I've had it a couple times without, but I've had it more often with Christians, that when they hear the bad news, they go, yes, I see the error in my way, I need to change. Or I see the error on why I did this, and here's how I make amends. It's not all the time. Oh, it's definitely not all the time. And I have had it with, usually after an extended period of time, with people that aren't following God. But to be able to receive that information, that bad information well, I think is a really huge testament to someone's character. I've just had a flood of people come into my mind. So if you're thinking I'm talking about you, maybe I am. But to hear bad news and to take it well, or to hear correction and take it well is, that's awesome. And hopefully God does some stuff to prepare your heart for when you're going to hear that bad news. When it just comes out of the blue, or the person giving it doesn't do it super great, it can be tough. But yeah, that's those are the big things that I got out of this. Sometimes God will ask us to do uncomfortable things. Sometimes he'll ask us to hear, or he wants to tell us some uncomfortable things, whether that's correction or what have you, and it can be difficult. Let me pray, and then we'll let you guys get on with your day. AJC, awesome Jesus Christ. Thank you for the book of Samuel and chapter 3, and that we could read through it, and Jesus is calling for today. Pray that something in there can stick with us. Lord, I thank you for being patient and teaching us how to hear your voice, how to discern who you are, and continue to teach and mold and guide and tune our ears. Give us ears to hear, Lord. Thank you that you did that not only here in the book of Samuel, but then you also do that later on with your disciples. I thank you that you worked on Eli's heart to receive the uncomfortable news and reality of the situation so that he could hear it gracefully. And I thank you for the courage of Samuel to step up and pass forward that information and that correction and the bad news well. And as Samuel honored you in that, you blessed him going forward. Lord, you know us better than we know ourselves. Help us take those uncomfortable situations that you call us into, that are going to be situations that are going to have eternal value, that far outweigh the situation that we're in and that we're facing. Lord, you are awesome. Guide, direct us, mold us. Help us. Help us with the bad and the good, in the valleys, on the mountaintops, and everything in between. Help us to stay with you. Guide and mold our hearts and help protect our thoughts. Thank you, Lord. All right. Have a fantastic day. Thank you for joining me. And if you ever want to rewatch this, I will be posting it on my YouTube account. And yeah, have a great day. God bless.